And joining us today, we have Zach Warden with Telus Agriculture. Zach, great to have you on. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having us, Jesse. We really appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you making the time. We have a lot of interesting things to talk about when it comes to streamlining our in season scouting notes and more. But first, I think before we get into all of that, can you just give us a little background on Telus Agriculture for folks who may not be aware of the company?
Absolutely. So for the past 7 years, I've been with a company called Agrian, and you may be familiar with Agrian using our label lookup or any of our agronomic tools. But for the past 2 years, we've partnered with Telus Agriculture, and they are partnering with companies just like Agrian, solutions in the agronomic and really agriculture technology space to come together that were pillars in the industry to connect the value chain and have one unified workflow. One thing we recognized is that agriculture, while connected from a technology perspective, is fragmented. Lots of point solutions, lots of different technology stacks that exist in this space. So Telus Agriculture is bringing them all together for one workflow for a true farm to fork technology solution that is 100% pure play.
Well, I know folks can learn more, tellus.com/agriculture if they want to learn more about Telus. And then Agrian, as you mentioned, that's where we got some software that could really help growers here kind of streamline all of their data in season. And obviously, Zach, it's a big task this year. We're still planting in many locations across the country. It's a pretty volatile year on the farm, but that is where technology and streamlining a lot of that data as we get into the growing season is very, very critical in a year like this.
That's exactly right. Being able to have all this information at your fingertips at all times is going to be extremely valuable. And some of the challenges we face in ag technology, like I mentioned earlier, is fragmented workflow. You do, scouting in one app, you get your soil and tissues from the lab. In another format, you get satellite or drone imagery from a provider. And they're all in different spots. I've got to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 websites to handle all of those things. So what Agrian and Telus Agriculture is doing is bringing them all into one platform for you as the grower, you as the advisor to work together on those sorts of activities. And after polling growers, we've identified that out of everybody that the grower works with throughout the entire life cycle of the year, the crop consultant and their advisor that they work with is 100% the number one trusted partner on farm. So how do we continue to drive that relationship? It's good tools between the two. It's good communication between the two, and everybody's in sync at all times. And that starts with good data consolidation being in one ecosystem.
Well, we think about just the advancement of technology in agriculture here over the last decade or so. I mean, some of this stuff, we think back to the 90s and the early 2000s wasn't, we weren't able to make it happen. We were writing stuff down or just starting to input it into computers. But nowadays, stuff like the software you guys have with Agrian and Telus Agriculture really it just makes that cohesive unit as you mentioned. I mean, our ag retail teams, working with our growers can find that information that they need almost at an instant, Zach.
That's exactly right. I mean, even sometimes today, right? Hey, I need to go find these old soil samples or whatever it may be. They're in a binder that sit on the shelf. And unless you're at the office and you have the time to go dig through it, they kind of go by the wayside, right? So we talk about the streamlining of data and being able to have it in your hands and be able to say, hey, I know we did these things on these fields last year. I don't want to have to call anybody. I can just look up what my advisor had shared over to me. Being able to have real insight, real action items, real follow-ups in real time at the farm gate is going to be extremely valuable.
Well, I think as well, with the amount of different diseases and weed pressures, et cetera, we're seeing here creeping farther and farther to the north, across the country, a lot of growers are facing difficult tasks. So being able to work and streamline everything with their seed advisor, their ag retail team is key. And also we look at just the cost of inputs right now, crop prices, everything at elevated levels. So, using this software, it's something that farmers are really going to be having to take a look at here to try and keep everything not only at their fingertips, but also just keep it all organized because there's a lot out there right now, Zach.
That's exactly right. And everybody scouts, whether or not you're doing it on farm, or whether or not your advisor is doing it for you, you have another service that you leverage, or your farm management team are handling those, depending on size of operation. But how is that scouting information being collected and escalated to the correct people? Through a technology solution is the only way. You'd either write it on a napkin, piece of paper, send a text to somebody, but that's not unified. That doesn't always stack when it comes time to do something about it. There's also what I think is the most valuable pieces, which is I want to look at this from a perspective of all of my fields within the county. How are pests moving east to west? Are you identified pressures are moving north? Also, how do I look at historical information? I want to see where in my fields we saw these pressures, how early we saw them last year, and how early we need to get out there this year to go out and maintain those problems or combating those issues we could see in the field.
And I would think as well, we haven't necessarily touched on this, but just the ease of use of the software as well for growers. I would have to think it's pretty easy and self-explanatory to navigate, isn't it?
Absolutely. We are all about user experience, and you can be as in the weeds and no pun intended, or as much involved as you'd like to be, or you can just be viewing, right? Your trusted advisor can be creating this information for you, and they can share it over to you in what's called our infield app. And infield is your Instagram or Facebook like feed where you can actually scroll through all scouting, recommendation, completion reports that your growers filing or creating for you. So you kind of have this ability to communicate with them and say, hey, you shared over this scouting card. We need to spray. We need to do these sorts of things to combat what we're seeing. And what we're finding is we're having an escalation of ag apps and as far as the portfolio of what people are using from a smartphone perspective when you're a grower. Number one is text. Number two is email. And number three, towards the bottom is ag apps. And we always wonder, why is that? And it really is complication of the app. I don't want to use it because it takes too much of my time. It's more time than what it's worth in my eyes. I'll let somebody else handle that. So we've oversimplified it to bring that communication up and to make it a more trusted app that growers want to be able to leverage.
Well, Zach, if growers want to learn more about this technology, what's going to be the best way to do that?
Yeah, they can absolutely reach out to Agrian by Telus Agriculture, but I'd also implore growers to just work with their retail and trusted advisor. Are you guys using a technology solution? And these are appropriate questions to ask as you trust them as a partner. Do you use an agronomic solution or a technology solution? No? How about Agrian? Or what do you use? Is it working? Or are you happy as a grower with the printables that come to you or the way the reports look when they come through? And if any of those answers are maybe or a definite no, I would definitely implore you to talk to your retail partners to talk to Agrian for this tool.
Well, I know folks can learn more online as well, home.agrian.com, or they can go to the Telus website, telus.com/agriculture. Zach, anything else you want to mention before we run out of time today?
No, we're extremely appreciative of the time. And like you said, if anybody wants to learn anything more and we piqued your interest at any point today, please feel free to reach out to us and we'd be happy to schedule some time.
Well, we appreciate the time as well. With that, Zach Warden with Telus Agriculture, thanks for joining us today, and we will hopefully talk again real soon.
Thanks again, Jesse. Have a good one.